What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Crying a Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Logan Mealy, joined once again by Ashton Logan. How are you doing today, Ash?
Good. How are you, Logan?
I am doing good. Well, we still got that fallout from the Liam Hendricks deal. Any final thoughts about that?
I think that kind of shows where the reliever market is, and we'll talk about that more in a later video. But
Yeah.
I think that I don't know how much impact that will have on the other positions, but it kind of shows that teams still are willing to spend some money.
You're right. That is for a later video, but this video is all about the outfielders. We're going to go through the outfielders, go through the DHs. They're included in this too. But let's just start in left field. Michael Brantley, give me your thoughts. Where do you think he'll sign?
Michael Brantley is a really interesting guy to me. Obviously, he's a great hitter. I don't know how much of a fielder he is anymore. I personally could see him DHing and playing the outfield, kind of that platoon role.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I don't see him returning to the Astros. I don't see really any of these Astros free agents returning to them. I think Brantley is a guy that would make sense to stay in the AL. For a team that would make some sense, potentially the Twins. They lost Eddie Rosario. They let him walk. And they lost Nelson Cruz, so he could play either that outfield role or fill in as the DH. I really think he makes some sense there.
Yeah, I mean, Brantley seemed to be the definition of just a solid baseball player. You get what you're going to get what he's given everybody the past couple of years, and that's a solid low 300s batting average, a handful of home runs. He hit 300 on the dot last year, and just a really solid, consistent player. And he's going to be 34 this next season, so he's kind of getting. I'm personally not expecting him to get this, huge 5-year contract. I could see him signing on somewhere for 2-3 years. Well, how long do you think he'll sign for?
I think that sounds about right. Yeah, I don't think a team's gonna commit to him super long term. But I think he does deserve more than a 1-year contract, especially if he goes to an AL team. Because even if his speed regresses, he's still got a really solid bat.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, he's just a solid, good veteran player, and that's what they'll get when they sign him. Now, another left fielder, Jack Peterson, kind of Kyle Schwarber-esque in a way, where a big lefty power bat can play the outfield, can play first base if you need him to. But Schwarber got 1 year, $10 million, and Schwarber's 28, Peterson's 29. They're both equal in age. Do you think that Peterson gets a 1-year deal worth 10 or 11 million too?
Yeah, I could see him getting a 1-year deal. He's another pretty interesting player because he's honestly not that bad of a fielder. I don't think he returns to the Dodgers. Obviously, his numbers in 2019 and 2018 are very comparable to Schwarber's in terms of OPS. I see. It's hard to tell because if we would have made this video before Schwarber signed, I probably would have said Schwarber's for sure going to an AL team to maybe DH too. But I think Peterson, it makes a lot of sense on the Angels, which was a team that almost traded for him last offseason. I think adding another solid bat to that lineup would help. And even you look at his numbers this year, as bad as they were, they're still comparable to Schwarber because Schwarber was equally bad this year. So I don't necessarily see a perfect fit for him, but I think there are a lot of teams that make sense.
Yeah, he's just a very he's a power bat. He did very well in the playoffs this year, especially the World Series. But yeah, just a power lefty bat that any team would want to have. Now, another left fielder, kind of in a similar vein. By that I mean a lefty. Brett Gardner. He isn't known for his power. He can poke a couple over the fence in the Yankee Stadium, but he's 37. He's getting old, and for me, I see him going back to the Yankees on a 1-year deal. I don't see him going anywhere else except returning to the Yankees.
Yeah, I honestly feel the same way. He's a guy that kind of embodies of kind of what you think of when you think of a Yankee player. He's clearly a kind of a
Yeah.
leader of that clubhouse.
If I remember correctly, he's the only player back from the 2009 championship who's still on the team.
Yeah, I think you're right. I yeah, the question with that is, I don't think it's even contract, because I think Gardner would just take a 1-year contract to return there. It's kind of if they have a spot for him, because at some point Clint Frazier has to maybe not be an everyday player, but stay up in the MLB.
Yeah, this step up. So yeah, stay on the 40-man roster.
Yeah, and I don't know if Gardner gets in his way, but that's the only real thing that would maybe hold him back from re-signing with the Yankees.
Yeah, I mean for my entire life it seems he's been with the Yankees, and I'm fairly sure that's true. I can remember watching him. He started playing in 08, and he's still playing now, and there's he has a career 43 WAR and a 260 career batting average. Like, I'm not sure. He is what I think about when I think about the Yankees, and it's just difficult to imagine him in any other uniform.
Yeah.
All right, so another kind of veteran player who's been with one team for a while, Ryan Braun. Um, do do you think that the Brewers want him back?
Honestly, no. I don't think he's obviously the same player he once was before. Maybe he's a great teammate, but I personally don't like him as a person.
I agree with that.
Yeah, he's a guy that didn't even really hit last year. I personally see him signing a minor league contract with the team. He's not even obviously not a great fielder, so I don't see a team that would necessarily go out of their way to get Ryan Braun.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his stats, and from this previous season, you got a 233 batting average with 8 hits and a literal .1 WAR. Like, and he's 37. I mean, this is not a young spry Ryan Braun we're talking about. Like this isn't looking good for him. And a minor league deal I think is all he'll really get. And it's I'm not sure why I thought this, but him to the Rangers maybe get a DH spot, just kind of a low pressure team. But I see him going to the Rangers personally, or the Rangers are staying with the Brewers.
Yeah, I could for sure see that happening. Or honestly, I could just see him signing a random minor league contract with any team, really.
Yeah.
I don't really see a team that's making a push to get Ryan Braun.
Yeah. Any other left fielders you want to touch on before I move to center?
There's two. First, Eddie Rosario. He's kind of a guy that we touched on before. Obviously,
Yeah.
he's a guy that I think makes a lot of sense to go to the Cubs, kind of replace Schwarber in a way, just that lefty bat. I don't see him necessarily as an upgrade to Schwarber. I don't see him as a downgrade either. I think he's a really solid hitter. He's proven himself in the league. I don't see him returning to the Twins because I feel like they would just send him the qualifying offer. I don't see a team that necessarily wouldn't want him, but I don't see a perfect fit for him really besides the Cubs.
Yeah, I mean, he's a solid player. 257 batting average, 13 bombs, 1.1 WAR. Played with the Twins his entire career. Like he's a solid everyday player who, he'll get 500 at bats a year, 600 maybe. Like he's getting in that box and he's grinding, and he He has been far down on the list, but he has been top 20 in MVP voting the past 2 years, which, it's something. Again, he's was 17th this year and finished 18th last year, but still being in the top 20 players in the American League, like that's solid. Like you are getting a solid player with Eddie Rosario.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, what was the other player you wanted to touch on?
Adam Duvall. Adam Duvall is a guy that's kind of been like a guy that was seen to have a lot of power for a while in the league, and this year with the Braves, he really took another step. He was a big part of that team this year. He's a guy for sure will get a major league contract. A team that I think makes a lot of sense is the Colorado Rockies. Obviously, they lost David Dahl to a contract with the Rangers. Obviously, hitting Coors would benefit him. Obviously, he's going to have power no matter what, but I think a full year of him, Coors, is kind of scary.
Yeah, I mean, he's a power hitter, and it's he's just really you get a good power outfield bat from him. And kind of a crazy statistic is 35% of all hits he had last year were home runs. 45 hits, 16 bombs. Like he is a power hitter, and when he steps into the box, we can expect him to put a couple runs on the board.
Yeah, it's always impressive when a guy only has a 301 on base percentage, but ends up with an 833 OPS because of how ridiculous his slugging percentage is.
Yeah, he's really he's a power bat. Now, let's move on to center field here. They're going to start off with the big headliner, George Springer. Declined qualifying offer from the Astros. Where do you see him going?
Springer, I know he's been rumored here a lot, but I really do think he ends up in Toronto. And early on, Springer was making a case for MVP. He is one of the guys on the Astros that hit this year, even without the cheating, obviously. 265 average, 359 OPS, 899 or 359 OBP, 899 OPS, 14 homers. Like those are ridiculously good numbers for a center fielder who's also a great fielder.
He's a great fielder.
Yeah, he's a guy. I hate to say like a veteran presence, but he would be a nice fit on that younger Blue Jays team who could honestly make obviously a case for the playoffs, but maybe even winning that division, especially if they get a guy like Springer. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and the big thing for me was World Series postseason hitters we've ever seen. Like he is absolutely insane in the playoffs, and if the Blue Jays are facing the Yankees in the DS or something, and Springer comes up to bat, like you'd rather Springer up there than Vladdy. Nothing against Vladdy, but Springer's been there. He has proven himself, and like that, he might be that extra push that Toronto needs to put themselves into a strong playoff position and maybe even push them ahead of the Yankees.
Yeah, and obviously I think they're going to make more moves than if they just get Springer. But yeah, they're a team that's I think clearly going to make a push this year, and I think he's a guy that would obviously help out a lot.
He's kind of an expensive player. I mean, he made $21 million last year. Like,
yeah, he's a guy that's going to be asking for around maybe $30 million this year.
Which that's quite the number. And the Blue Jays, they got money to spend. They got Vladdy, they got Caven, they got Bo, all on like low paying contracts. So they got money to spend, and Springer wants it. Okay, so another center fielder. Now, the center field class, there's a lot of players who are going to be picked up by a bad team and dealt at the deadline. By that, I mean Gerard Dyson, Billy Hamilton, Delina, the Shields. I have a feeling they're all going to be picked up by, smaller or less competitive teams this year and just dealt off at the deadline. That's what happened with like Gerard Dyson this last year, signed with the Pirates, dealt to the White Sox for their playoff push. And Billy Hamilton, I feel like that's happening every year for him. Is he played with the Reds for a while, but I feel like ever since then he's just been bouncing around the league. Do you see any of these guys signing anything more than a minor league contract for 1 year?
I think a couple of them could get a major league contract, but it would be for 1 year. I see most of these guys as solid defensive players, kind of more speed guys. I don't think one jumps out at me above the others. Obviously, you kind of say Billy does just because of how fast he is, but obviously it's not because of his bat. I think some of these guys might sign with better teams and play in the minors at first, and be an injury replacement or a guy that will just kind of be a pinch runner for a team, because we saw the Royals kind of do that a couple of years ago, where they just try to put the fastest players on the field, and it worked okay. Obviously, not super successful, but I think we will maybe see some of these guys sign with better teams on minor league contracts. But I don't see any of these guys being big impact players for teams next year.
Yeah, I mean, Billy Hamilton, 2019 signs with the Royals, dealt to the Braves for their playoff push. 2020 signs with the Mets, gets dealt to the Cubs for their playoff push. Like he's just kind of bouncing around. But one player that kind of sticks out to me that's, not Springer level, but not Gerard Dyson level, Jackie Bradley Jr. He is a phenomenal defensive player, but I'm struggling to see where he's going to go. I mean, the White Sox needed a lefty bat for a while, and I thought, him or Peterson, heck, even Schwarber, but they signed Adam Eaton of all people. So I'm kind of curious. Do you think Bradley's going to get a bigger contract? Where do you think he's going to sign?
I think Bradley's another one of these guys that'll get a 1 year contract. He is a guy that I see going to maybe a less competitive team, and obviously potentially being dealt at the deadline. But yeah, I don't necessarily think there's a big market for Jackie Bradley Jr.
Yeah.
But I think he is a guy that will probably be a starter on a not as competitive team this next year.
I'm not sure why. Another team that makes a little bit of sense for me is the Giants. They got that big outfield. He's got a great glove. And, they were a game away from making the playoffs last year. Like, they might want to make a little push for it, with Joey Bart behind the dish. Hopefully, I mean, I could personally see him signing with the Giants a 2-year, $12 million deal. What do you think?
I think that's obviously possible. I really don't see him getting more than 1 year. Obviously, I could be wrong. I think the Giants do make some sense, because I'm pretty sure they had Kevin Pillar in the roster last year, and now he's a free agent. I think getting a lefty bat for that team would be nice, but I don't see a necessarily perfect fit or a perfect team for Jackie Bradley Jr.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to the right fielders now. Is there anyone we really need to talk about here?
I feel like there's some solid guys there that could play a role on some teams. I think Nomar Mazara, a guy that played for the White Sox last year, maybe not the best hitter, but young enough where he could still develop into something. Nick Markakis is the guy who's been around for a while, always hit pretty well. Domingo Santana is a guy who had one pretty solid year, also kind of young enough where you could see him developing into a pretty solid everyday hitter. A guy that I kind of want to touch on is Yasiel Puig. And I want to ask you, do you think Puig gets a contract this offseason?
That's interesting, because he just signed on with Luba Sports, and I feel like Rachel Luba is a very aggressive agent, and I could see him getting a 1 year deal for just kind of a lower tier team. But I hope I'm not entirely sure if he gets a contract, but I really, really hope he does.
Yeah, once again, a team that I think makes sense, kind of biasly, is the Cubs. Because they still need to fill that outfield hole. I think Puig's a guy that he obviously can hit pretty well. He's a very solid fielder. Maybe not the best guy in the clubhouse, depending who you ask. But I think he'd be another exciting guy to add to the Cubs.
Yeah, and I feel like, he's a young, exciting player, and, a young, exciting players, I think, the Padres. And I know they kind of have an outfield situation all set, with Will, Tommy Pham. But, I mean, he's a young, exciting player with a huge personality. The Padres fit well in my mind.
Yeah, I could see that. I personally do see him going to an NL team. Well, it doesn't have to be an NL team, but he's a guy that does play the field fairly well. Obviously, has a very strong arm. Um, Once again, I don't necessarily see like a perfect fit for him either. I think there are some teams to watch, potentially the A's. But yeah, I think he's a guy that'll at least play the field well wherever he goes.
Yeah, definitely. Now, me personally, I feel like there's not a whole lot else to talk about here. Adam Eaton signed with the Sox in December, so Hunter Renfroe signed with the Red Sox in December, and there's just not a whole lot of big names in right field this year.
Yeah.
So I think on that note, if you have any other right fielders you want to talk about, but we move to DHs.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so Nelson Cruz, he's a 40-year-old. He's getting up there in age, but he's an absolute tank. He's an absolute powerhouse. I'm not sure if he'll get a multi-year deal, but I think he deserves one. What do you think?
I think he's a guy that I don't think he wants to sign a multi-year deal. Obviously, he's older. I think he wants to just kind of sign a year-to-year contract. Obviously, he kind of has to stay in the AL because he cannot play the field really at all. I don't know if I see him returning to the Twins. Obviously, it's a possibility. I don't know if he necessarily has to go to a competitive team. Obviously, I think he'd probably like to potentially reuniting with the Orioles as kind of that veteran presence in the locker room. I think maybe even the Astros with them losing Brantley, but yeah, I don't necessarily see him getting a multi-year deal. But I think wherever he goes, he'll be a great hitter.
Yeah, he's just a stellar hitter who, in a regular year can give you 20. Not in this year he can give you 20-ish bombs, but like, I mean, 40. Maybe he pushes 50. But I mean, he's just a powerhouse type of guy here, and well, like you said, 1 year contracts is all I see him really getting. But I mean, what I'm he's not going to sign with the Yankees, but 1 year at Yankee Stadium with that short porch, that'd be insane.
Yeah, he'd hit 50 home runs.
Oh yeah, he would, no doubt. But it's kind of interesting. The Twins, obviously, Cruz didn't play the outfield. He was a DH, but I mean, the Twins are losing Eddie Rosario and Nelson Cruz. That's kind of big for them. Do you think they'll try hard to re-sign one of them?
I think they'll probably still try to get Cruz back. I don't necessarily see them trying to get Brantley back or trying to get Rosario back. That's why I kind of thought Brantley would be a good fit there. I think Cruz is obviously still a possibility. But at this point, when a guy is on the market for this long, who really knows? Obviously, I think he makes sense for almost all AL teams, considering how good of a hitter he is. And I think he'll for sure get a contract if he wants to play.
Yeah, definitely. Well, another kind of Nelson Cruz-esque player with just a pure power, pure DH type of guy. Edwin Encarnacion, but I'm not sure if I can say pure power after his last season. That was kind of a disappointment.
Yeah. Obviously, I think you and all White Sox fans were expecting more from him. I think he still is capable of being a good hitter. Obviously, I don't think there's really any chance he returns to the White Sox. Um, Maybe he reunites in Toronto. Um, he's a guy that he'll probably get a major league contract for a team. Once again, I don't see a perfect fit. He really is just a pure DH at this point. He's a guy that could go to maybe a non-competitive team to start. But yeah, he had a bit of a rough year last year.
Yeah, that universal DH is like really going to determine like the possibilities of where he's going to sign, because there's no way he's going to be able to play first base or anything. I really don't see it. But the final big DH I feel like is Marcelo Zuna. Do you have any ideas of where he's signing? I mean, as a biased White Sox fan, I could see him signing with the Sox, but I mean, I could also see him going back to the Braves. No questions asked. What do you think?
Yeah, I personally think he returns to the Braves. Although he's listed as a DH, he's a guy that he can play the outfield, and he's not terrible. I don't think he's necessarily a good outfielder, but he hit so well with that team last year, and it seemed like, especially in the playoffs, like you could tell he got along with his teammates, and they kind of had a good relationship. And he's gonna be asking for some pretty big money with the way he hit last year, but I think he does return to the Braves.
Yeah, I could see that return as a high possibility. Now, Yoenis Cespedes, I I am not so sure where he's going to end up. The Sox just signed his younger brother, but I I'm not sure if he returns to the Mets in this situation. I'm not sure where he goes. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't necessarily see him returning to the Mets either. I really don't think that's really even a possibility. Um, he's another guy that could reunite with a former team in the Tigers and be that kind of veteran DH. Although you kind of don't know, but he might even be a guy that maybe doesn't get a major league contract. He's getting up there in age, and if he does, it'll be a 1 year deal. Um, I think that there's a lot of AL teams that would make sense. I don't think NL teams want him in the outfield at this point, although he has a pretty big arm. Um, yeah, I see. There are a couple teams that would make sense. I see him going to one of those worse, like the not as good AL teams, and a team that you brought up a lot of the Rangers. I think he makes some sense there. Um, I really don't see him getting that much term on a contract. I think he'll go wherever he can, like whichever team offers a contract is where he'll end up.
Yeah, yeah, he just has not been too awfully good these previous years, which is he was such a big power player for the Mets for a while, back in their 2015 run, and also I remember his cannon with the Athletics. I mean, he's a darn good ball player. So like in this 2020 plays 8 games. Like it was a weird year, but I feel like a 1 year deal, which I think is all he's going to get, is really going to either make or break his career, because I mean he's 35. He's kind of getting up there in age. So if he is a great 36-year-old season, and contending team signs him to a 1 year deal or something like that, he can extend his career 5 years if he wants. But I feel like right now he's really at a pivotal point to determine, okay, is it 2 more years, 6 more years?
Yeah, I think this next year will show where he's at, obviously in his career. I think maybe this even free agency shows where he's at in his career. Uh, Concerning he once was obviously a star player, I would say, and he just has no market right now.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a huge market just in general for a lot of players.
Yeah, that's very true.
Any other DHs you want to touch on?
Honestly, no. I mean, I guess Jose Martinez was a guy who everyone thought would be a perfect DH for a while. Went to the Rays, didn't hit. then went to the Cubs, didn't hit. He's a guy that he can still play a platoon role. He hits lefties very well. But yeah, I don't think a team's just gonna say come to our team and you're the DH every day.
Yeah, he's definitely a platoon type of guy. So yeah, I think that wraps it up here for Crying in Baseball podcast. I'm your co-host Logan Mealy, along with Ashton Young. We thank you for listening. See ya.
Peace.